January has arrived, and with it that familiar weight in your chest. You look at the new calendar, at the promises of fresh starts that everyone makes, at the renewed energy you should be feeling, but there's only a silent exhaustion echoing inside you. It's as if you had run an invisible marathon throughout the entire past year, and now, when everyone celebrates the new beginning, you're there, breathless, trying to understand why your body and soul feel so heavy. It's not depression, it's not just physical tiredness. It's something deeper, more existential. It's the feeling that you carried the world on your shoulders, and now, at the moment when you should feel light, you discovered that the world is still there, waiting to be carried again. Albert Camus understood this sensation in a unique way. For him, the human condition was marked by a fundamental contradiction, our desperate need to find meaning in a universe that remains silent before our questioning. When you feel this exhaustion at the beginning of the year, you're not just experiencing tiredness. You're facing what Camus called the absurd. It's the moment when you recognize, perhaps unconsciously, that all the rushing around from the previous year, all the goals achieved, all the problems solved, didn't bring the lasting satisfaction you expected. And now, facing another year, you wonder if it's worth continuing to invest energy in a search that seems to have no end. This existential exhaustion emerges when you realize that you've been repeating the same patterns, fighting the same battles, pursuing the same objectives, but something essential remains empty. You worked, related to others, consumed, produced, strived to be a better person. And still there's a persistent feeling that something fundamental is missing. It's as if you had spent the entire year pushing a stone up a mountain, and now at the top, you discovered that the stone will roll back down and you'll have to push it again. This is the experience of Camusian absurd translated to our contemporary reality. Camus tells us the story of Sisyphus, condemned by the gods to eternally push a stone to the top of a mountain, only to see it roll back down. Sisyphus represents all of us in our human condition. Every day we wake up, face our responsibilities, struggle against our limitations, seek achievements, and at the end of the day, or at the end of the year, we realize we'll have to do it all again. The stone always rolls back. And when January comes, you're there looking at the stone at the foot of the mountain, feeling all the weight of the repetition that lies ahead. But the exhaustion you feel isn't just about repetition. It's about the constant pressure of having to give meaning to this repetition. Our society bombards us with the idea that each year must be better than the previous one, that we need to constantly evolve, that we must have clear goals and defined purposes. When you don't feel this renewing energy, when all you can feel is tiredness, it seems like you're failing to be human in the right way. There's a silent guilt that accompanies this exhaustion, as if you should be excited, optimistic, full of plans and hopes. Camus teaches us that this pressure for constant meaning is part of what exhausts us. We spend so much time trying to justify our existence, find grandiose purposes, construct coherent narratives about our lives that we forget to simply exist. Exhaustion arises when you get tired of being the screenwriter, director, and protagonist of your own life simultaneously. It's exhausting to have to give meaning to every choice, explain every decision, justify every moment of pause or uncertainty. When you feel this deep tiredness at the beginning of the year, you're experiencing what Camus identified as the crucial moment of human consciousness. It's when you stop automatically accepting the narratives that have been imposed on you about how life should be lived. It's when you question whether you really need to always be growing, always improving, always achieving something new. It's a moment of intimate revolt against the tyranny of constant progress and personal optimization. This revolt for Camus is not destructive but liberating. When you recognize that you're exhausted from trying to fit your life into predetermined molds, you open space for a more authentic way of existing. Exhaustion becomes a sign that you're ready to stop living life according to external expectations and start living according to your own internal experience. It's as if your body and psyche were saying, "Enough. I can't stand pretending that all this makes perfect sense anymore." Often, this exhaustion comes accompanied by a feeling of isolation. You look around and it seems like everyone is excited about the new year, full of energy and plans, while you can barely get out of bed without feeling the weight of the world. But Camus reminds us that this feeling of absurd is universal. All of us at some point face this confrontation with the apparent meaninglessness of existence. The difference is that not everyone recognizes or admits this experience. Many prefer to hide behind distractions, arbitrary objectives, or belief systems that promise ready-made meaning. You who are feeling this deep exhaustion are actually being more honest with yourself than those who pretend to always be fine. You're facing the reality that life doesn't come with an instruction manual, that there's no pre-established purpose waiting to be discovered, that much of what we do is repetitive and apparently without ultimate meaning. This honesty is courageous, even if it doesn't feel like it. Existential exhaustion also arises from the overload of possibilities that characterizes our era. Never before in human history have we had so many options, so many possible paths, so many ways to live a life. And this paradoxically can be paralyzing. When you can be anything, do anything, go anywhere, the responsibility of choice becomes overwhelming. Camus called this freedom, but a freedom that comes accompanied by anguish. You're exhausted because you spent the previous year navigating an ocean of infinite possibilities without a reliable map. You made decisions based on partial information, invested energy in paths that proved frustrating, built expectations that reality couldn't sustain. And now, facing another year of infinite possibilities, your internal system is asking for a pause. It's saying it needs something more solid, more tangible, more present than the constant projection into the future. Camus proposed that faced with the absurd of existence, we have three options: physical suicide, philosophical suicide through blind faith, or revolt. Revolt is not a destructive rebellion, but a courageous affirmation of life despite its apparent lack of meaning. It's saying, yes, life may not have an ultimate purpose, but I'm going to live it intensely anyway. When you're exhausted at the beginning of the year, you might be on the threshold of this existential revolt. Exhaustion can be an invitation to rethink not just what you want to achieve, but how you want to exist. Maybe you've spent years trying to optimize your life as if it were a machine, seeking efficiency, productivity, constant growth. And your body, your mind, your soul are saying, I'm not a machine, I need different rhythms, moments of contemplation, empty spaces, experiences that don't need to lead anywhere. Pause for a moment and reflect. When was the last time you felt truly exhausted like you're feeling now? Not the common tiredness of daily life, but this deep exhaustion that seems to question the very meaning of continuing. If you're going through this, leave a comment simply saying, I feel this too. Your response isn't just a vent, it's a way to remind others going through the same experience that they're not alone in this existential journey. Sometimes knowing we're not the only ones carrying this weight is enough to make it a little lighter. Camus teaches us that human solidarity arises precisely from the recognition of our shared suffering. When you admit your exhaustion, you're not demonstrating weakness. You're participating in the universal human condition. You're being authentic in a world that frequently rewards the performance of constant happiness. You're choosing truth over appearance, and that's an act of existential courage. The exhaustion you feel at the beginning of the year might also be related to the pressure of being consistent with yourself. Throughout the entire previous year, you probably strive to maintain a coherent image, to make decisions aligned with who you think you are, to honor commitments you made to yourself and others. But sometimes you change, sometimes your priorities shift, sometimes you simply don't want the things you wanted before anymore. And trying to maintain this forced consistency is exhausting. Camus valued the idea that we can constantly reinvent ourselves, that we're not prisoners of our past identities. When you feel exhausted from trying to be the same person you were last year, it might be a sign that it's time to allow different aspects of yourself to emerge. Maybe you're tired of always being the responsible one, always the problem solver, always the optimist. Maybe it's time to explore other aspects of your personality that have been neglected. Existential exhaustion can also arise from confrontation with time. When you look back and realize how many years have passed, how many times you made similar plans, how many times you believed that this time would be different, there's an inevitable confrontation with finitude. You realize you don't have infinite time to discover the perfect meaning of life, to become the ideal person, to solve all your internal problems. And this perception, although realistic, can be paralyzing. But Camus shows us that awareness of finitude, far from paralyzing us, can free us to live with more intensity. When you accept that you have limited time, that you'll never be perfect, that some existential questions will remain unanswered, you can stop wasting energy trying to solve what cannot be solved and start investing energy in what can be fully lived in the present. This deep exhaustion you feel might be signaling that it's time to change your relationship with time. Instead of always projecting happiness and fulfillment into the future, maybe it's time to find ways to experience fullness in the present, even if it's an imperfect fullness, incomplete, full of contradictions. Life doesn't need to make perfect sense to be lived intensely. When Camus wrote about living fully despite the absurd, he wasn't proposing a philosophy of resignation, but of passionate affirmation of human experience. The exhaustion you feel might be the prelude to a more authentic form of engagement with life. Instead of trying to control and optimize every aspect of existence, you can learn to surf the waves of uncertainty, to find beauty in imperfection, to embrace complexity without trying to reduce it to simple formulas. One of the deepest sources of existential exhaustion is the constant pressure for personal growth that characterizes our contemporary culture. You probably spent the last year trying to improve aspects of yourself, develop new skills, break old patterns, cultivate healthier habits. And while growth can be valuable, the constant pressure for improvement can become a subtle form of rejection of who you already are. Camus invites us to consider the possibility that maybe you're already enough as you are. Maybe exhaustion is a sign that you spent too much time trying to become someone different, and too little time simply being who you already are. There's a difference between growing organically from your experiences and forcing changes because you believe your current version is inadequate. Self-acceptance for Camus is not complacency, but realistic recognition of your humanity. You're a complex mixture of contradictions, virtues and limitations, moments of clarity and moments of confusion. Trying to resolve these contradictions or eliminate them completely is an impossible task that only generates more exhaustion. Maybe it's more liberating to learn to dance with your contradictions, to find beauty in your human complexity. Exhaustion at the beginning of the year can also reflect an overload of stimuli and information that characterizes our era. You probably spent the previous year bombarded by news, opinions, analyses, predictions, advice on how to live better. Your nervous system might simply be saturated with input, asking for a period of silence and internal processing. Camus valued moments of silent contemplation, of simple observation of existence, without the need for constant analysis. When you feel exhausted, it might be because you spent too much time analyzing life and little time simply experiencing it. There's a difference between living consciously and living analytically. Consciousness can include moments of pure experience, without the mediation of conceptual thought. If you've made it this far in this reflection, you probably resonate with this experience of existential exhaustion. This isn't just a channel about philosophy, it's a community of people who recognize that living consciously is sometimes difficult, complex, and yes, exhausting. If these ideas make sense to you, if you feel you're not alone in this journey of questioning, consider subscribing. Not because you need more content, but because sometimes it's comforting to know there are others exploring the same deep questions about what it means to be human in this complex world. The exhaustion you experience at the beginning of the year might be paradoxically a sign of vitality. It means you're not anesthetized, that you don't automatically accept superficial narratives about happiness and success, that your consciousness is active and questioning. People who never feel this existential exhaustion might be living more superficially, avoiding the necessary confrontations with fundamental questions of existence. Camus teaches us that revolt against the absurd is not a revolt of anger, but an affirmation of human dignity. When you refuse to accept easy answers to complex questions, when you keep your questionings alive even though they're uncomfortable, you're exercising your fundamental freedom to think and feel authentically. Exhaustion might be the price of this authenticity, but it's also its reward. Consider the possibility that your exhaustion isn't something to be solved quickly, but something to be understood deeply. Maybe it contains important information about what really matters to you, about which aspects of your life need to be rethought, about what kind of existence you really want to cultivate. Instead of trying to eliminate tiredness with quick solutions, you can explore it with compassionate curiosity. Camus's philosophy doesn't offer easy consolations, but offers something more valuable: The dignity of facing life as it really is, not as we would like it to be. When you feel exhaustion at the beginning of the year, you're facing life as it really is. Complex, sometimes repetitive, frequently without obvious meaning, but still your only opportunity for conscious experience in this universe. This exhaustion might be the beginning of a more mature form of relationship with existence. Instead of expecting life to provide you with constant energy, clear purpose, and lasting happiness, you can learn to generate your own energy through authentic engagement with the present, to create your own meaning through your choices and actions, to find moments of joy even amidst complexity and uncertainty. Camus wrote, "There is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Judging whether life is or is not worth living amounts to answering the fundamental question of philosophy." When you feel this deep exhaustion, you're facing a version of this fundamental question, not necessarily contemplating suicide, but questioning whether it's worth continuing to invest energy in life as you've been living it. The Camusian answer is clear. Yes, it's worth it, but not for the reasons we're usually given. It's not worth it because there's a grandiose purpose waiting to be discovered, or because constant happiness is possible, or because everything will eventually make sense. It's worth it because it's the only experience we have, because there are moments of beauty and human connection, even amidst the absurd. Because we can create meaning through our choices and relationships, even knowing this meaning is temporary and personal. The exhaustion you feel might be signaling that it's time to redefine what it means to live a valuable life. Maybe it's not about constant achievements, linear growth, or persistent happiness. Maybe it's about authentic presence, genuine connections, moments of contemplation, acts of creation, gestures of solidarity. Maybe it's about learning to find extraordinary in the ordinary, profound in the simple, meaningful in the apparently trivial. When January comes and you feel exhausted, remember you're in good company. Sisyphus, pushing his stone up the mountain, must have also felt moments of deep exhaustion. But Camus invites us to imagine Sisyphus happy, not because his task makes sense, but because he chooses to embrace it completely. Not a happiness based on the illusion that the stone will one day stay at the top, but a happiness based on full acceptance of his condition and the decision to live intensely anyway. Your exhaustion at the beginning of the year isn't personal failure, character weakness, or a sign that something is fundamentally wrong with you. It's a moment of honest confrontation with the human condition, an opportunity to rethink not just what you want to achieve, but how you want to exist. It's an invitation to stop trying to solve life and start living it, to stop seeking perfect meaning and start creating personal meaning, to stop waiting for exhaustion to disappear and start dancing with it. The absurd of our condition is that we continue living despite all the reasons to give up. We continue loving despite all disappointments. We continue creating despite the impermanence of our creations. We continue seeking connection despite our fundamental solitude. And maybe it's precisely this inexplicable persistence, this existential stubbornness, that constitutes our dignity as human beings. You who are exhausted but still here, still questioning, still living, are fully participating in this absurd and beautiful dignity that characterizes our species.